Yeah, so tomorrow morning I'll be speaking about a book called The Kite Flyers. It's actually a interesting book for me because this is my third novel, but also in some sort of way it's my first novel because I've written three. But what happened is about 7 or 8 years ago, I had a novel called Kite, which was published by Picador here in India. But after that, both the publishers and I started getting, this book is actually set in Tamil Nadu, so you people would find it really interesting because it has a lot of the politics of it is real. It is set in the 70s, so a lot of the politics around MGR era is in there. So, but what I found was a lot of readers, even though the book is quite bizarre, when you read it, you actually think, whoa, this is quite crazy. It's a bit experimental. But everybody was writing to me wanting to meet the characters in the book because people said, this is not made up, this is stuff which happens and we know it's real, you couldn't have made this up. So as we kept getting these queries, the publishers actually said to me, listen, can you do an update? Like, can you say what happened to these characters and take it off from where, because it was a shorter novella. And I thought at the time, you know, obviously if somebody says, offers you a contract and says, write this book, and you say, yeah, sure, you can do it. But really, about 6 months into this, I thought, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this because it's like when you finish writing a book and you moved on. It's like your baby, and your baby is now grown and you're gone, and you're no longer that young father. I was no longer in the space. I just couldn't, to tell readers what happened to the characters. I couldn't get myself into the characters' headspace. So actually it was funny, after about 6 months, I was actually about to write to them and say, listen, I don't think I'll return any advance. I don't think I can do this. And then suddenly it started to flow, so it ended up being an expanded version of it. So it's really the story about politics, you know, how passionate people are here. You know, Tamil Nadu is virtually unique. As you know, you can't drive by any road without massive, plump, juicy cutouts of politicians. You know, everybody becomes amma or father or uncle, or, you know, it's like the politics is so massive here and people are so passionate about it, and people, you know, willing to die for it and things like that. So I think that's fairly unique in the world even. So I think it's set in the time of, within the thing of Tamil politics, but of course it covers, it wasn't set out to do that, but just because the characters are, you know, they face divisions between their politics, their caste or their gender and stuff like that, so it covers a lot of those. For a start, see, I was born in England, but my parents actually came to Tamil Nadu, so I can actually speak, read and write Tamil fluently. So I actually spent quite a bit of time here, so obviously I know the place. So I think after that, I would say, but to me the most humbling was when I first came here, I think in 2007 for the book launch. At the end of the launch, most of the people were like, you know, we want to meet those characters. And I said, no, that barber shop, it's set in a barber shop. And I said, called Kite, is actually fiction. And they were like, no, sir, you know, we know what's fiction and you are living somewhere else. How do you know all these things? So I think in some ways it was humbling that if people were convinced that it wasn't made up, then you actually captured the pulse more accurately. So I think, yeah, I'd say you'd have to read it and make up your own mind. But yeah, so in some ways, when I come to Chennai, I think that's a special novel because for me, because people here relate to it locally, but also it is a unusual way with this novel transpired because this is actually like an extended version of my first book. Basically because the three friends, they start off. There's also a story behind the title, because what happened is originally I wrote it as a short story called The Kite Flyers, and it actually was a runner-up in a literary competition in the UK. This is like ages ago. And then, you know, because being a medical practitioner and busy, I didn't really do anything with it. I just put it in my drawer. Then years later, I sort of expanded it and wrote it into a novella, and then Picador UK bought it, and then they published it here. But at that time, the same year it was being published, The Kite Runner was published, which was quite famous in the US because it was set in Afghanistan around the time of all the problems. So basically the marketing people, they said you can't have two books starting with Kite. So they changed, even though mine was written as a short story before it. Yeah. So basically because the publishing people felt they couldn't have two books with Kite, they changed the title of mine to Cool Cut, which was the name of the barber shop. Because the motto when you go in to have your haircut, it says God made man but cool cut made gentleman. That's like a, that sort of mottos you see in Tamil Nadu. So basically it became Cool Cut, and that was the original novel. But when I had a chance to redo it, I said to them, listen, why don't we go back to the original title, just because to me it was always the kite flyers. That's how they meet in a village while they're flying kites. So that's how, it's a story of childhood friendship, and as they grow up they get separated. And so yes, so basically I don't want to give away the plot, so I'm trying, but what it is basically it's set in a fictional village outside Salem sort of area, and it's set in a fictional village called KKP, which is an acronym just for Kakapi, which, as you know, is just crow shit in Tamil. So basically it starts off with they're in a village school, so it's a very simple kind of Tamil Nadu village life, and so their pastime is flying kites on the banks of the river. So as they grow older, things each one, somebody has a tragedy, so they actually get separated, and one of them moves to Chennai and he starts a barber shop, and then he settles down as a barber. And then it's also set partly among the world of eunuchs. So what actually happens is the plot goes through, so he's seen through the eyes of the barber shop, which is actually quite a political barber shop, because he has a strong leaning towards MGS politics. So everywhere it's like the barber salon is also like a shrine to MGS. So basically there's a lot of political discussions of people who come there and stuff like that. But as the story evolves, their lives get entwined again, which they don't realize in the beginning, and then how their lives meet again is the plot of the story. It's a very good question. I think when it was a short story, it was purely the story of a kite flying competition where they meet. So this is like the village kite flying competition where they're putting glass on the kites and cutting off their. So really the story really focused on the kite flying competition. So they meet, and it doesn't go into too much detail of each one, but it talks about that competition and the individual characters in it, and that's why it was called the Kite Flyers. But as it went forward, people kept saying, hey, what happened to the characters? So it became a little novella, and then after the few years, publishers said, hang on, people still want to know, so it's got bigger. I hope it's finished now.